Hey everybody, welcome to Heilman Haver in the Mix. Today we're going to be celebrating one of the most popular movies of its era and also one of the most popular television shows, MASH. And the reason we're celebrating this episode is that this is the week of January 25th. And in 1970, the movie MASH premiered. Not to mention, today is actually Thursday, January 28th, and it's the 85th birthday of none other than Alan Alda, who made his name playing Hawkeye Pierce in the television version. Many of you may not know there was a movie version of MASH, and before that there was a book version. But today we're going to celebrate the anniversary of the film. We're going to celebrate Alan Alda and his career, a fantastic actor, one of my favorite actors. And we're going to do it in true MASH style with a martini, but not just any martini. Our mixologist extraordinaire here, Mr. Heilman, has done some research and come up with a recipe for martinis that they actually would have drank if they were in Korea during the war. It wasn't gin.
Yeah,
and why not?
When I mentioned that we're doing this in the mix around MASH and some of these things, people said, "Oh, gin,
Yeah,
martinis." But there, if you look at the still in the show, Hawkeye and Trapper John, there's no infusion chamber,
Right.
So you can't infuse the juniper berries and the other herbals that you'd get in gin. What they most likely did was made a rice or wheat-based drink with anything that they could have found in the area, you know, scrounging for things. So what that really turns out to be is probably Baijiu, which is the national drink of China and the most popular drink in the world as a result.
Right.
Baijiu is a varied drink. It's kind of like gin in that there's a number of different varieties based on what's infused in it. Every region has its own version of Baijiu. There's a number of manufacturers, just like any sort of alcohol. This that we have here, the brand is New Lan Shan, and this is out of Beijing. And this is I'm just going to make sure I get this right here. It's a sorghum and wheat based, strong fruit aroma and herb finish, and infused with peas and barley. So it's a number of layers of flavor. Now, we're going to do a couple of things that you wouldn't normally do if you're a Baijiu drinker. First of all, they usually drink it. They never drink it in a cocktail. It's never mixed with anything. They drink it straight at room temperature or a little warmer out of a ceramic glass. Now, we don't have a ceramic glass. We're going to try this for the first time. We've never had this before. So this is going to be an experiment.
Yeah.
We're going to drink it out of shot glasses. Obviously not the Chinese way or the aficionado way. And then we're going to make a cocktail with it too. So it's challenging to make a cocktail with this because of the essence of the flavor and its strength. But I think we found something that will work, which we'll try in a little bit. But first, let's see what this stuff tastes like.
Start, yeah. So, and it's got a really great fragrance. It's like plums, I would say.
Definitely pick up that fruity fruitiness.
And what's the proof?
This is 52% alcohol, so 104, 105.
All right.
All right.
Oh, cheers. You know there's alcohol in there.
Definitely.
But there's a lot of fruit and what was the finish? Herby,
yeah. I can see that because you definitely taste it as it goes down the palate on the different layers of it. It's really nice.
It's actually very smooth. That's my first time too. Yeah, wow. Not unpleasant.
Not bad at all. So,
and that's probably how they drank it. Had there been an actual 4077 in Korea, they probably, making martinis, a lot of people just drink them straight.
Yeah.
You know, it's just gin or vodka chilled with whatever garnish. So, and if you were an army surgeon, you'd probably want something that's 52% alcohol.
Boy, the stuff that they probably
knock the edge off. Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do cocktail-wise is we're going to make the Hot River, which is, it's got our Baijiu, it's got some Elderflower Liquor, Grenadine, and pineapple juice.
Oh, that sounds
good. It should be interesting. So the drink, once again, we're going to break the rules. This drink recipe doesn't call to be served in a martini glass. It's usually in a glass with ice, topped with soda water. But, we want to drink martinis because we're talking about MASH.
This is all about MASH.
So we're going to make this into a martini glass. And do it that way. So while mixing,
yeah, we got
talk about
some
MASH.
fun trivia. So again, 1970, the MASH movie premieres. So for those of you who haven't seen it or even know that there was a movie predecessor to the TV show, MASH it's an irreverent black comedy, or what would be considered a black comedy these days. It follows the exploits of a host of offbeat characters at a medical unit during the Korean War, including surgeons Hawkeye Pierce and Trapper John McIntyre, who create havoc with their martini parties, practical jokes while the war rages around them. The film spawned the successful TV series and won an Oscar for Best Screenplay, directed by Robert Altman, and was based on a novel by Richard Hooker with screenplay by Ring Lardner Jr. And of course, many of us are familiar with the characters of Hawkeye Pierce, Trapper John, Hot Lips O'Houlihan, Major Frank Burns. Now, the only person that carried over from the film to the television show was Gary Berghoff as Corporal Radar O'Reilly, and of course his teddy bear probably made it as well. So Donald Sutherland was Hawkeye Pierce. Elliot Gould was Trapper John. Sally Kellerman played Hot Lips O'Houlihan. Robert Duvall played Major Frank Burns.
Nice.
And Roger Bowen played Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake. Renee Auberjonois, I think I got that right, of course, of Star Trek fame, and Boston Legal, was Father John Mulcahy, and of course we mentioned Gary Berghoff as Radar. No Klinger in the movie, but it came a little later. So
there's the joke that since MASH is a Fox property, Disney bought Fox. Klinger is now a Disney princess. And with that, I will shake the drink.
Sounds good.
All right, let's strain this in a couple.
So is this easy to find? I know you actually had to drive all the way to the east side, right?
I did, yeah. It's
Bellevue?
not. I could not find it anywhere over in our area.
Nice color.
And then we're going to top this with a little bit of, make it even here.
And
some grenadine on top.
Are there a lot of recipes that use?
Some, not as much as other alcohols, simply because I think it's hard to make a recipe that goes with this kind of flavor.
Sure.
Fruit flavors, I think they say, or citrusy drinks usually work well with this because it's kind of a, and this is a fruitier version, so it's probably maybe a little easier depending on the variety. But this one, I think in and of itself was good. But I think that's really the other reason is because traditionally you're just drinking it straight.
Yep.
All right, so a little bit of...
And of course we'll post the recipe for the cocktail in the show notes. Ooh, nice and sweet. All right.
There we go. That should be about even.
Okay.
All right.
There we are. Oh, I like that. It blends really well with the pineapple juice.
It does, yeah.
Really well.
It's not too sweet. I think...
No. Fans of a martini would probably enjoy this.
Mm-hmm.
Sweeter, obviously, than a standard martini, but...
Very enjoyable, though.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, that might have to go on the list of regulars, I think, for our In the Mix recipes. So, again, the MASH movie was... actually, it was released around the same time as Catch-22, based on the Joseph Heller novel. And nobody really expected it to be a big hit. It was almost kind of the first... They considered the first indie film, in a way. In fact, 14 other film directors passed on directing this before it was offered to Robert Altman, who really made it his own.
Absolutely.
Stanley Kubrick even, and Mike Nichols passed. So with its initial box office take of $41 million in 1970 dollars, MASH, the movie, up until that time was the second highest grossing comedy film of all time, coming in just below The Graduate from 1967. And this was also, according to director Robert Altman, the first R-rated movie to use the F word. But he claimed it wasn't his idea. During the second unit shooting for the football game, which is the kind of the culmination of the movie, it comes near the end of the film. Actor John Schuck was told to say something really nasty to his opponent. Schuck came up with, "All right, bub, your effing head is coming off," which made it into the film's final cut. So there you have it, and the rest is cinema history.
Nice.
And then this is a little bit more of a I don't know, a little more depressing trivia, but strange. So Roger Bowen, who played Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake, a really lovable character, at least in the TV show, died on February 16th, 1996. McLean Stevenson, who most of you are probably more familiar with, portrayed the same role of Blake in the movie, or sorry, in the TV series in 1972 for the first 3 seasons, starting in 72. He died the day before, February 15th, 1996. Wow. So it's like Thomas Jefferson and John Adams kind of a thing. But and although the film was set on the front lines of the Korean War, the only gunshots heard during the entire run of the movie are actually from the referee's pistol during the inter-camp football game. So, and when the movie was released, the military actually did not want the movie to run because it obviously had an anti-war message. The case went all the way to the Supreme Court.
Really?
Yeah, and they ruled that the military cannot withdraw the film for this reason. So instead, they chose to run the movie Patton, which also happened in 1970 with, of course, the incredible George C. Scott. It ran it the following week, and it boosted that morale back up, I guess. They're thinking that it was a little bit more complimentary to the military. So, and speaking of which, Robert Altman definitely intended this to be an anti-Vietnam War, an anti-war film to, in general, but definitely anti-Vietnam War. And in the beginning of the film, you'll see that it identifies the location as Korea. This was added at the insistence of the studio because they didn't want that anti-war message as obvious. So, 1970, a hotbed of obviously patriotism and then anti-war activism. So, an interesting movie for its time. It probably wouldn't play as well now. It's a little dark. There's a lot of intergender hazing type things that go on.
Yeah, I was surprised at that because growing up in the 70s, I had watched the series.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And going back watching the movie afterwards, I was surprised how dark it was compared to the television series.
I read Roger Ebert's review of the film, and he gave it a pretty wide berth when it comes to a lot of the stuff that especially with the Me Too movement, etc., people would probably find a little bit offensive. His take was that the horrors of war are so horrific that these guys had to find some outlet, mm-hmm. and it turned into kind of see who can pull the craziest pranks, so you can get away with the most.
Yeah.
And it was very anti-establishment. Even the other military members, like Hot Lips Houlihan, who took her job so seriously but never got in there and elbow deep in the guts and blood, they poked fun at them. And they wanted them to really bring them down to the reality of what they faced every day. And it is a fairly graphic, as far as violence goes as well. Violence, gore, things like that. But then again, that's what those people dealt with.
Yeah.
So, pretty sobering.
Definitely didn't sugarcoat it.
No, certainly not, but did give it, obviously, a shine around the edges as far as the comedy. So it's still rated one of the funniest comedies. I think 14 on whatever list. There's always lists. But of course the other thing we want to toast, and again, this is delicious. I'm really enjoying this. Is today, the day we're recording is January 25th, and this is the 85th birthday of Alan Alda.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I want to talk about a guy who's had a varied career. Obviously, best known as Hawkeye in the MASH television show. He was the only cast member that was in every episode. He also directed. He also wrote. So this guy, he was just a jack of all trades. The funny thing is, he didn't sign up to play Hawkeye until 6 hours before the filming began on the pilot. So I'm sure there's a backstory there, but and he also almost turned down the role because he didn't want war to be a backdrop for lighthearted hijinks, is what he called it. He's definitely gotten involved in politics, especially in later life. He definitely is not no slouch when it comes to speaking out. And this was one of the first things he took a stand on. He said, "I wanted to show that the war was a bad place to be." And he wanted to show the horrors of war on television, even though in many ways the sitcom was watered down a bit from the film. Right. But so he actually had it written into his contract that one scene of every episode of the show had to take place in the operating room while surgery was occurring. So
interesting.
Yeah. He was also the first person ever to win an Emmy for acting, writing, and directing. He accomplished the wins in all 3 categories for his work on MASH. before the series ended. And again, yeah, he was the only actor to appear in every episode. And yeah, I think the series lasted 4 years longer than the Korean War did. So
well, it's like Titanic.
Right. Took a long longer to sit through it than for the ship to sink. But obviously, Alda's done a whole lot. What are some of your favorite roles that he's had?
Boy, so straight up comedy wise, I'd have to say I love him as the president in Canadian Bacon, which is one of my favorite comedies. Michael Moore film.
Yeah.
Hilarious in that. Otherwise, I think, and you mentioned writing and directing.
Mm-hmm.
He did all of that in the 4 seasons.
Ah, right.
And he based that on a friendship that he had that kind of, there was a misunderstanding, and then he came to realize that the friendships go through ups and downs and phases just like the season. So he wrote and directed it with his good friend Carol Burnett.
Right. Yep. Lifelong friends, actually. Yeah. Childhood friends.
Hilarious film, and just really good from start to finish. And then also, same time next year. It's probably the first Alan Alda film or anything I saw beyond MASH. First was introduced to him in MASH. I think same time next year is where I next saw him after that. So, and that was a really good film as well. But I'll tell you what, if you've got to see any Alan Alda film, to me, you've got to go see the 4 seasons.
Yeah, I think that the appeal of Alan Alda is he has that everyman appeal. But he can also play a very sinister character, which I really enjoyed in The Blacklist with one of my favorite actors of all time, James Spader. He played Alan Fitch, and he was the Assistant National Intelligence Director, and a senior member of the Cabal, which is a crime syndicate that Raymond Reddington, Spader's character, knows a lot of secrets about. I'll just leave it at that. But one of those very in control. Reminds me a lot of Charles Dance in that role, in that just in control completely, doesn't get ruffled. But there's just that. It's almost he's so calm that it's creepy. You know this guy is powerful, and Alda just pulls that off. And I think my other favorite role is Bill Warren in California Suite, which is a Neil Simon film, and it follows the escapades of a series of couples who all converge on a hotel. Some are vacationing, some are having marital problems, and Alan Alda plays opposite Jane Fonda as a couple who have a daughter. The daughter runs away from New York, runs out to meet her dad, Alan Alda, in California, and they kind of reunite after all this time. And he just plays that same just calm, quick little barbs.
His style is really a fit with Neil Simon.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think so too. And a very excellent comedic actor, but who can also pull out the drama chops.
Yeah.
And also a humanitarian. He was actually very instrumental in a movement a couple decades ago to bring different verbiage to the Constitution. He's a feminist, an avowed feminist. He has 3 daughters, and he's been married to the same woman for 60-something years. And this was a proposal to amend the Constitution to include language that was gender neutral, involved both genders. So men was also women, instead of just men, mankind, man, that sort of thing. Didn't pass. But much to his chagrin, something he couldn't quite you find some good interviews with him, but on that subject. But yeah, I don't know. It makes good sense to me, kind of thing. He's got a man of many hats. Yes, very talented guy. So
and great life so far, and it's not done yet.
No, certainly not. Now I believe he was. He did get a diagnosis, I believe, of Parkinson's in the last couple of years, and so hasn't appeared in anything lately. 85, you give the guy a pass. He's also been really instrumental in working with a lot of scientists to make their work more easily understandable for the public. So he's a big science guy as well. So just again, Renaissance man.
Yeah, and the consistency there between the work you're talking about with the Constitution and the science work is making these things accessible to more people. Yeah. And that goes back to the MASH. So we were talking about with MASH, with wanting to make war is messy business.
Yeah.
But he's making it accessible. He's making it relatable in that we can understand it as people who have no experience in battle or in those situations. But the way, that stipulation in his contract, making sure that we could see what's going on in the operating room, kind of brought us into that and allowed us to understand that. So that's been something that's, throughout his entire career.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's been recognized for his work. In 2005, he became the 5th actor to receive an Oscar, Emmy, and Tony nomination in the same calendar year. Aviator for the Oscar, West Wing for the Emmy, and one of our favorites, Glenn Ross for the Tony. He took the Jack Lemmon role, if you've seen Glenn Ross, the film of Shelley Levine, which completely makes sense, and rode that all the way to a Tony nomination. So cheers to Alan Alda, and a very happy birthday, sir. We are in awe of your talents.
Yes, definitely.
And before we go too much further, as far as cheers go, we do have to mention Cloris Leachman, and also Cicely Tyson, who just passed in the last 2 days. Cloris was 94, and Cicely Tyson was 96. So again, it's great to see these people so talented, contributing for so many years, and living long, prosperous lives.
Yes, for sure.
Cheers to them. You got anything left to cheers with?
I got a little bit here.
Okay, well, we're going to wrap it up, and we're going to make one more of these. So make sure to check out the show notes for this delicious recipe, and do your best to find some Baijiu. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, you did.
All right. Well, thank you for the cocktail recipe tonight. And make sure to tune in to our most recent episode with Zandy Carlson. She's an excellent director, actor, acting coach in Seattle. And we had a great conversation with her this week, so check that out. That's going to launch tomorrow, which would be, I guess, the 26th of January. 29th of January.
Yes.
Flip the 6 over and make it a 9.
And speaking of the 29th of January, the start of the West Sound Film Festival.
Absolutely.
So look at our YouTube page for some in-depth videos around the film features, the blocks, the awards, and how to watch them. The film festival is virtual this year, so it's a little bit different. So in case you want to get the hang of how to go see the films, what films are out there, take a quick look. They're short little snippets, but they're pretty informative as far as making you feel comfortable with the film festival, which we're both looking forward to.
Yes, we are. And I believe the next In the Mix segment that we have is going to be our reviews.
Yep.
So stay tuned for that. Thank you again for joining us right here on Heilman and Haver In the Mix, and we'll talk to you all again soon. Cheers.
Cheers.
This is delicious.